All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachak Wadash. Double honors to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the elders of Great Millstone, who rule very well, very beautifully. Double salutations be unto the Akim and her pushing his gospel in truth and sincerity to the best of their ability, given to them by Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Peace, blessings, and salutations be unto the elect scattered abroad. May the election of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Lord willing, fall upon your houses. This is Brother Quanah Wath come back at you, Lord will, with the edifying lesson through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Lord will. It is edifying, Lord will. It is straight to the point. And I was meditating, right, on, just a lot of the things that are happening right now, right? San Francisco ultimately, was, right? They ultimately, came back online, but, a good portion of them, right? Even still, right, there's still a little bit of them that are still, that still don't have any electricity, right? But ultimately, right, just bringing out the point, right, San Francisco, or a good portion of San Francisco, I think it was 130,000 people, right, that were ultimately affected, right? They didn't have any electricity, right? The grid ultimately shut down on them, which, we speculate through the spirit, man, that, it might be Esau, doing his little, little experiments or whatnot. But nonetheless, right, with the different events that are taking place and happening, the U.S. is going after a third oil tanker, right? Venezuelan oil tanker, right? You got tensions rising, right? Between America and Syria, right? America just struck Syria, and then there's plans of, more attacks, on Iran, by Israel and America, right? Which, again, right? These are major events that are taking place, right? Leading to World War III, right? As well as you have, the FDIC basically, approving, right, the Genius Act, right, to be, established. Esau Edom is basically, coming out, with information saying that yes, they dump about 200 million, gallons, right, worth of chemicals, right, on the people, right. All this information, Esau being revealed, right. The MO to the TB, which we know is the RFID micro C hip, is being pushed, right, heavy, right. Digital IDs, everything digital, right. This technocracy that we're under, right. This digital, infrastructure is being heavily pushed, right. So we understand that we're at the absolute end, right, of this rulership, right. They're at the end of this ion, this age, and wherein Esau Edom, which is the wicked, right, is ruling, right. And as we approach closer and closer, to his, dethroning, right, if you will, which, ultimately, his, starts with Yahweh Shai, right, coming and, consecrating, right, all the rule, power, and authority unto himself, and divvying out, right, that rule, power, and authority, right, amongst the elect, starting with the 144,000, right. As we approach that moment, right, things are going to continue to get harder, right. This walk, this truth, right, is going to continue to get harder, and our faith, right, is going to be tested even more, right. We're in the time where all the things that Yahweh Bashem Yahushua has had us, speaking, right, it's going to be put to the test on whether we believe those things. Not only do we speak them, but do we actually believe them? So again, our faith is going to be tested, even more as the days, draw on. So I'm going to start right here and select you for the long intro. This is Luke 22 and verse 31. It says, and the Lord said, right, and it's talking about Yahweh Shai. Yahweh Shai is saying this, right, to Peter, right. It says, Simon, Simon, behold, Satan hath desired to have you, that he may sift you as wheat. Right. Now I want to go into that word to sift. It says that he may sift you, which is Strong's G 4617, siniazo, right? Siniazo, right? It says what? It says to sift, shake, and achieve. And here's the point. It says figuratively, right? Fig, right? By inward agitation, to try one's faith to the verge of overthrow, right? So Satan is ultimately, going to try to get us, you know, off that path, if you will, right? Try to make it to where we lose faith, you know? And we're in the time where a lot of people, right, are losing faith, right? Like, you know, the beautifully, right, the elder apostle Tahar, right, coined 2026, right, the year of apostasy, right, as well as sellouts and agents, right? Now, when you go back to that word apostasy, right, it goes back to one who ultimately, you know, falls away from, you know, the established religion, right, ultimately falling away from the truth, you know, and that ultimately goes back to, you know, because they lack faith, right? If you fall out or you leave, you know, the truth, right, you truly just lack faith, you truly lack vision, you know. And again, right, we're seeing it happen now, right, but it's going to happen a hell of a lot more, right, as the days draw on, you know. And, you know, that should not only put a, you know, a level of fear, right, within us, but that should ultimately have us, you know, in the mindset to buckle down more, right, you know, to lock in more, you know, to set your feet, man, set your ground, man, you know, as the scriptures say, right, to be rooted and grounded, right? We got to be rooted and grounded, right, in this truth, in this ministry, right? We got to be steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, right? Because as things, you know, draw on, right, again, our faith is going to continue to be tested, and the tests are going to continue to get harder and harder, right? And the only way that we're going to be able to pass those tests is if we're staying in the Spirit more and more, you know. That's what we got to do, man. That's what's required of us, especially in these times. And, you know, I speak for myself first and foremost, right? I pray that Yahweh Bashim El Shah ultimately put that spirit on me, right? Because I'm the one that's saying it right now, man, you know. But we all need to lock in, right? We all need to, you know, ultimately, you know, focus, you know, and set our feet, you know, and get ready for, you know, whatever punches, right, are finna get thrown our way, man, you know. You got to keep your elbows up. You know what I mean? Keep your chin up. I mean, your chin down, really. You know, you want to be able to, you know, you don't want your chin to be exposed. But you know what I mean, man. You know? Keep your eyes up, if you will. That's probably a better, you know, a better example, if you will, right? Keep your eyes up, you know? Keep your chin tucked. There we go. Chin tucked, right? Elbows in, you know? Ready to be able to, you know, ultimately to duck, you know, and pivot, right, and counter when need to, man, you know, because if you're not, right, you're ultimately going to be screwed, man, you know. So we got to be, you know, in the Spirit as much as possible, right, as it says in Galatians, you know, the 5th chapter, you know. What does it say? Galatians 5. I think it's 17, if I'm not mistaken, Galatians 5 and 17. It says, verse 16, this I say then, walk in the Spirit. And that's the Spirit, man. As I'm standing under this light pole, the light comes on, right? It says, this I say then, walk in the Spirit, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh, right? The more that we walk in the Spirit, right, the less that we're, you know, ultimately given into the carnal side, right? Because we're still in this flesh subject unto sin. And the more that we give in, right, to that carnal side, the more that we, you know, are not walking in the Spirit, it makes it easier, right, for Satan to ultimately, you know, do his job, right? Because that's what he is set up for, right? It's to do, you know, do the will of the Lord Yahweh Bashim El Shah, right? He is the left hand side angels, man. So he is ultimately set up to try to, you know, overthrow our faith, right? And he's going to do that by many different means, right? Out, you know, external means, right? You got family members, right? Your children, your housing situation, finances, so on and so forth. All those different things, you know, which are heavy, right? They're things that, you know, can affect you, right? But we can't let it affect us to the point where it overthrows our faith, right? And then internal means, right? That voice you hear that's constantly saying all different types of negative shit, you know. First and foremost, right? You gotta compare these thoughts, right, to the scriptures, man, right? Which will allow you to be like, no, that's not scriptural. No, you know what I mean? Fuck that. And then identify, right, that it's Satan, man, and rebuke that thought, right? In the name of Yahweh Bashim El Shai, right? Because that's what we have to do, right? That's going to be our biggest fight, right? Is our internal fight, right? That's where Satan is ultimately going to be fighting the hardest, fighting us the hardest is internally, but see again, right? Yahweh Bashem El Shai giving us the tools, right? The scriptures, the words of Yahweh Bashem El Shai, right? To fight with, And again, this is why we have to stay in the scriptures. We have to stay watching videos. We have to stay in the spirit as much as possible, right? Again, obviously having that proper balance, but staying in the spirit more now than ever, right? It says, for the flesh lusteth against the spirit, and the spirit against the flesh, and these are contrary one to the other, so that ye cannot do the things that ye would. But if you be led by the spirit, you are not under the law, right? And it tells you about the works of the flesh, right? All wickedness, right? All these things, right? All the different characteristics and moves that these people be making out here in the world, right? Those things will lead you to death, right? Those things are of the flesh, right? But it says right here, verse 22, but the fruit of the spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, right? Faith, right? That's a key ingredient right there, man. Having faith, and if you ultimately allow, for Satan to creep in and overthrow you, hey, well, guess what, man? That's a guaranteed spot, right? A guaranteed your name being written on one of these ICBM nuclear missiles and it being for you, right? It might even just literally come, the Lord Yahweh Bashem El Shai might make it to where it comes directly for you. And that's a scary thought, man. So we can't let Satan creep in and put, negative or evil thoughts within our mind, or allow for these different situations that Satan throws at us, right, to overthrow our faith. It says, meekness, temperance, against such there is no law, and they that are Hamashiachs have crucified the flesh with the affections and lusts. If we live in the spirit, let us also walk in the spirit, right? Let us walk in the spirit, man, right? And that's how we're going to be able to fight Satan, We got to fight Satan, man, consistently every single day. Otherwise we lose, right? We have to continue to fight the good fight of faith all the way into the end, right? Because really losing is not an option, man, right? Giving up is not an option. Losing is not an option, right? Allowing Satan to win is not an option, man. So we have to continue to fight, man. Satan is going to come harder now that, again, we're seeing these prophecies, right? The last few prophecies, right, are about to hit. 2026 is going to be a year of years, man. And we, I was listening to, brothers out there in Jersey, the Saints of Jersey, he's doing an in transit. I can't remember the brother's name, Salakia, the YouTube channel is Saints of Jersey 2. He was doing an in transit, and he said that we have to be prepared through the spirit, man. We have to, because shit about to get real fucking bad, man. And the only way that we can do that is, again, stay in the scriptures as much as possible, man. We in those times, man. Just stay in the scriptures, stay in the spirit. Continue to, ultimately filter everything through the scriptures. As much as your thoughts, right? The different things that you go through, filter all those things through the scriptures, man. As much as, is on your spirit to do so, right? Do it. Because, the fight is finna get harder, man. So just stay in the spirit, Continue to watch, continue to pray. Let me go back to that Luke 22, right? Because Yahweh Shai, right? And he said he's with us, man, right? This is Luke 22. I'll read verse 31 again, right? It says, and the Lord said, Simon, Simon, behold, Satan hath desired to have you, that he may sift you as wheat, right? To the verge of overthrow. He wants to overthrow us, right? Overthrow our faith, And again, there's many means that he's going to try to do that. But see, we have someone that's in our corner, right? Verse 32, it says, but I have prayed for thee, right? See, Yahweh Shai is in our corner, man. You know, what do he say? He says, be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. You know, letting us know that, hey, if I did it, you can do it too. You know, it says, but I have prayed for thee, that thy faith fail not, right? And when thou art converted, strengthen thy brethren, right? So, hey, Yahweh Shai is praying for us, man, right? That we, you know, ultimately make it through whatever tests get thrown our way, man. You know, Yahweh Shai is in our corner, man, right? So remember that, right? Yahweh Shai also said, you know, that he will be with us even unto the ends of the world. You know, these are things that we have to remember. These are things that we have to continue, you know, to meditate upon, you know, because it's true, right? Yes, we're going to go through, you know, a whole bunch of different tests. Yes, we're going to go through a whole bunch of different afflictions, chastisements, sufferings, and so on and so forth, right? And they're going to get worse, right? The intensity of them are going to continue to get worse as the days go on. But see, again, we have to remember that Yahweh Shai's got our back, man, you know, all the way into the end, you know. But that's all I wanted to grab, man. You know, Lord wills edifying, Lord will straight to the point. I want to give all praise, honor, glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachak, with the Hashtabal to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the elders of Great Millstone. Till next time I say Shalom.